Welcome to the SuperHero Conversations, a podcast saga with innovation leaders who will be at Supernova, the #1 tech innovation event in Benelux, happening in the end of March in Antwerp, Belgium. I'm your host, Domenik, and joining me today are the two superheroes behind Miles Ahead, Ewout Meyns, the partner at Miles Ahead, and Florian Myter, the co-founder of Weavly. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
It's really nice to have you here. Maybe you could give an overview of who you are and what you have done during your career.
Sure. So I'm Ewout Meyns. I'm a tech entrepreneur and investor as well these days. I graduated as software engineer, then quickly after started my own company, PySync. I think after 6 months, together with two friends from university, we quit our jobs. Because it quickly turned out that those jobs were not really the jobs we were hoping to get after graduation. So we decided to start PySync, a startup, a SaaS integration platform to connect all the world's business apps. That was back in 2012, was the very beginning, I think, of all the startup madness that started to happen in the world. Back then in Ghent, it was pretty hard still to raise funding. There were not so many initiatives. I think it took us 2 years to really get to a point where PySync could start scaling. And that was back when we started joining the iStart incubator program, one of the first initiatives here in Ghent, which was really great for us as a young startup. So in 2014, we started scaling, raised a couple of million of funding, grew our team to about 25, 30 people, and ultimately scaled PySync to a couple of million in ARR. Then got acquired by HubSpot, the probably well-known US marketing platform, which for us as young founders was a dream exit, I would say. HubSpot was already one of the biggest partners that we were working with, but never expected them to all of a sudden come with an acquisition offer. So definitely a big milestone. We joined HubSpot with the entire team in 2019. I stayed there for a couple of years until I would say my personal mission was finished. So once the whole team was integrated, once our technology was integrated, also once I was sure that HubSpot Belgium was actually a thing, something I'm pretty proud of. The PySync offices turned into the HubSpot Belgium office, which is still around these days. And currently has space for up to 80 people, I believe. So 2 years ago, I quit HubSpot. That whole mission was ended together with my co-founder. Took a little bit of a break, started a sabbatical, but as all these things go, after a couple of months, you start missing the whole startup roller coaster rides. And of course, after an exit with a company like HubSpot, you get lots of text messages from other founders. They want to meet up, want to grab a coffee, want to hear the experiences or want to brainstorm some ideas. So I've been doing that for quite a while. I think almost a year. I've been coming to Ghent and drinking a lot of coffee with many different founders. Really enjoyed that actually. But then half a year ago, decided to join Miles Ahead, the venture studio in Ghent, which is founded by Wim de Walle, the CEO of iStart from back in the days, and then Luc Burgelman, who was an investor at PySync and personally also my mentor. So I knew about Miles Ahead for quite a while, and last year got the question to join the startup studio, mainly to help startup founders like Florian with anything go-to-market related. So that's what I'm mainly focusing on today.
You, Florian?
So I initially started in the academic industry. I got a master in computer science at the VUB. I then decided to do a PhD in computer science as well in distributed data systems. The initial idea was that I was looking for freedom on one hand and building cool stuff on the other hand. Managed to do that in academia for a while, but then figured out that at some point you need to grow up and become a professor and whatnot. And so I ended up figuring out that entrepreneurship was probably something that was closer to what I was looking for than academia. And I started a spin-off of the VUB with my co-founder Jesse, based on partially technology that he was developing at the VUB. And the big idea back then was to turn Figma designs into full stack web applications. So writing the entire no code wave. So we started with that. We raised 1.2 million, pre-seed and seed combined. And we're currently mid-pivot, stepping away from the whole Figma no-code aspect, but I think that's a topic for discussion later on. And of course, one of our investors is Miles Ahead, and the venture studio part. So working together with Ewout pretty closely on the go-to-market, figuring out the pivots, where to go to, pretty intensive.
Florian, could you explain what do you do at Weebly?
Yep. So essentially, we by launching this product of turning Figma designs into full-stack web applications, we noticed there was a strong pull from the market towards building web forms and surveys, but then completely custom-made in Figma, which to us was sort of an insane use case because there's 1,000 form builders out there, right? So why would people want to use Figma to do that? And it turns out that we integrated AI way back. So I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, when first version of GPT launched. And it turns out that the AI part of it, so being able to generate a custom form with AI, was something that people within the design industry were looking for. It's a product that wasn't in the market back then. And so we decided, okay, we need to pivot from doing full stack web applications to focusing purely on the survey and the forms industry or that use case. But then stepping outside of Figma because it's hyper niche, right? Who wants to go through Figma to build a web form to then invite people or gather surveys? So that's what we're doing.
Ewout, you have been throughout the career. You have seen many pivots. You have seen many kind of change of the initial concepts. So why do you think that it's important to switch and to switch quickly?
Yeah, we always joke a little bit that every startup needs their pivots. So you better do those pivots early on so that you get that part done and you can focus on scaling the business. I think reality is just that you always start with an idea, with some kind of dream image you have in your mind, like this would be a really cool product. Sometimes, the idea comes from an actual problem, but even then, you start building a solution, you start chatting with customers, and typically what happens is that the whole idea, it just starts completely changing. It's something we've learned the hard way. I think I forgot to mention that in those first 2 years, we made all the possible mistakes that you could make as a founder. And definitely zoom in on that. One of those mistakes was definitely to stay too long with the original idea. It's better to just quickly launch something to customers, get feedback, go through that feedback loop, actually start iterating on the product and try to find that product market fit. That's the first very important goal for every startup. I think for Weebly, it's a very exciting period. There's definitely already some product market fit, but the whole pivot is happening and the whole search towards that perfect product market fit is actually where we're currently at. So, yeah.
So I interview you just in the right moment.
Exactly.
In the, right time. In the middle of the pivot. Fantastic. Every minute that you spend here, the company loses money without you.
But that's the point until you exit, right? So you'll be losing money until you exit. So
I have a question. What is the balance between pushing strong enough for your initial idea to actually, make something of it, hardworking and, understanding that you actually need to make the initial idea work and actually kind of switching? Because if you switch too fast, if you switch without making, sure that this is not the right idea, that you need to continue, how to find that balance?
Yeah, you should definitely not switch too fast. The first time you'll get your product in the hands of potential customers, the problem might be there, the solution might be there, but if it's not designed the right way or features are missing or it's not user-friendly, people just might not like it. It doesn't mean that your idea is wrong or your product is wrong. So, there's definitely some dedication needed to just continue looking for that ultimate product market fit. And I think a big pivot you should definitely think about that not for quite a while, but don't do that like overnight. But I think it's something you just feel as a founder. You just go into those conversations pretty quickly. You probably feel the product you're building doesn't really make sense for that target customer or that kind of problem in that market. But if you feel like something is resonating, you probably try to get deeper, zoom in, iterate, and try to find like the ultimate solution for a customer's problem. But I think the most important lesson here is to not give up too soon. Pretty sure many startups fail because of that reason, by giving up too soon and not trying to find that right product market fit.
Florian, take me through the timeline of you, fundraising and Miles Ahead actually, giving you giving you funds to grow further. What stage we're in? How was the cooperation? What was the pitch like? You can give me some stories as well.
So I think partially the same story as Spicing. We did a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And as a spin-off, I think by default, the only way you can build a startup is the wrong way. Namely, you start out with technology and then you try to reverse engineer a problem onto that, which is the worst kind of way of building a startup anyway. Start with the problem, but if you come out of academia, you're so far from everybody's regular world that there's no way you're going to identify a real use case, real problem with immediate paying customers. So you have to start with the technology. So we started with the technology with the goal of, okay, we can turn Figma designs into full stack web applications. We used that bare bones MVP to raise our pre-seed round with Cubic, which is a fund in Belgium that specializes in university spin-offs. Typically biotech, where I think we're one of the only software companies there. And so we used that initial pre-seed round to build our complete MVP, launch it, bring it to market. So that was the stage that we were at when we met Miles Ahead. So we managed to put the MVP into the market. We had some paying traction, not a lot, but the curve was interesting enough to start talking to VCs for seed rounds, especially that we're B2B, but we're product-led. So there's not a lot of these in Belgium. We're a very sort of enterprise or SME-focused country. And Miles Ahead, it was looking exactly for that, right? So a product-led B2B, sort of a completely inbound marketing machine, because that's what Ewout's very good at. And so they were looking at incorporating that into the venture studio. And through Stan Christians, the founder of Colibra, I got an intro at Miles Ahead. So I know Stan because Colibra is a spin-off of VUB as well. And so I basically asked him, like, hey, we're doing a seed round. Is there anybody that you know that I should meet? Here's an intro. And then he sent it to, I think, Ewout, Luc, and Wim all together. Everybody was in CC. And then, we met and we hit it off. And well, it was a bit longer than that, but it ended up in signing the seed round, basically.
Ewout, why did you invest in Florian?
Well, at Miles Ahead, as a venture studio, as we're investing in very early stage companies, for us, the team is the most important part, actually. It's the thing that we look most at, because anything else you can change. You can still change your ID, you can still change your business plan, you can still change your team, but that's a bit of a harder one. At Weebly, the team definitely impressed us quite a bit. Both Jesse and Florian seem like very solid founders. The thing that for me personally excited me most about Weebly is actually their go-to-market strategy. The fact that it could be grown in a product-led growth way. That's exactly how we built PySync. So during all those years at PySync, we grew our company to a couple of million ARR without any sales reps. So purely based on a free trial, a really great, easy-to-use product where companies can just try it out and sign up for a paid subscription if they like the product. It's a really interesting way of growing a startup. And as Florian mentioned, it's not that common in Belgium. There's also not so much expertise and examples available here. And I think Weebly is one of those examples where product-led growth just makes sense as like the main driver behind the growth strategy.
Ewout, you kind of made the transformation from founder to a VC. Hopefully, you'll become a founder someday soon as well. What are the key points, and what do you think are the main benefits of actually going through the hurdle of going through the hard timeline and the hard moments of being a founder, and then actually understanding it as a VC? What are the main maybe knowledge bits, the aspects that you now know that you can implement when investing?
Yeah, maybe first I want to make clear that I'm not really feeling as a venture capitalist. So again, Miles Ahead is a startup studio, so we're definitely a venture fund, but we're also a studio. We're actively helping our companies to grow. We're mainly focused on first-time founders, and our goal is to really make sure that they don't make all the mistakes that we've made before. So my role is really into that studio team. So I'm helping 5-6 companies in parallel, working with all kinds of different founders. And I think a really hands-on approach where we're joining the management meetings. We're not doing any of the operational work or the actual hard work. That will leave up to the founders. But we're definitely available for any kind of advice. And I think we're going pretty deep into helping them shape their go-to-market strategies. So that's a bit of a nuance. I feel a little bit as an investor. I'm also doing some personal investments besides Malzehet, but mainly still feel like an entrepreneur. And by the way, the whole Malzehet team consists of entrepreneurs. That's what I really like about Malzehet. Many VC funds, it's all financial people with a lot of experience, of course. But for me as a founder, I really appreciate the actual feedback from ex-entrepreneurs and ex-founders, because they really felt the pain that we've been going through as well. And I think that really works with Malzehet. I feel it when I'm talking with founders. I think there's some kind of trust because the founders just realize that we've also been in their position, and we definitely understand how hard it is to scale a company. But then, to answer your question, we're looking at, especially is definitely the team, as I mentioned before, the team, but also the global potential, definitely very important. Definitely if you start a company in Belgium, I think that global potential from day one, or global focus from day one, because if you focus too much on the Belgium market from the beginning, it might be hard to move beyond Belgium and go international. Global potential, great teams. And then of course, if it's a good idea, that also helps with making that funding decision.
But the last one is just a tiny bit.
No, it's not that tiny, of course. But again, the idea will probably change. So the idea is important. And for Malzehet, there's also different verticals or categories that we focus on, like sustainability, like health. So definitely the kind of company is pretty important for us as well. But I can't emphasize again how important the team is.
And with Malzehet, do you invest only in Belgian companies?
No, definitely not. Mainly focused on Belgium because we're all physically, mainly in Belgium. We also made an investment in our London-based robots architecture company. Pretty exciting product they are building. We're definitely looking on an international level as well. There's some London, Amsterdam-based companies in our pipeline. Of course, there's so much talent in Ghent as well, and in Belgium, that the majority of the pipeline is still being generated from Belgium. But we as VCs or venture funds should definitely show the example as well by having that global or international focus as well. Yeah,
it's interesting to see how you first started in the beginning of the 2000s and 10s. You are already in a well-established ecosystem. I would say it's still evolving, but it's already it's more has been done in Belgium than 10 years ago. Florian, what is the main advantage of doing a startup in Belgium, and what is the main disadvantage?
So for me, the main advantage is partially the point that Ewout drove home as well, is the fact that you're forced to focus outside of Belgium. So unless you're building a startup which entirely focuses on sort of SMEs and brick and mortar businesses, then that you can build that out in Belgium, that's fine. But if you're building out a SaaS product, the Belgian market is one, very small. Two, it's segmented. I mean, if you sell in Wallonia or you sell in Flanders, you'll probably need to target people in different languages. So you have to go outside of Belgium right away. You're forced to do that. And I think that's a benefit. And I also think that what makes it cool to be an entrepreneur is being able to sell stuff at the other side of the world, bring value to people that you've never met. I think that's great. If I see a Stripe notification, it's the first thing I check is what's the country? And it's always nice, like somebody in South Korea while I was sleeping started using the tool, then converted to a paying customer, and then ideally leaves us a good feedback. I think that's great. And I think that's the strength of being a Belgian. One, the language, most people speak English, so you're fine doing sales calls around the world. And two, you have to anyway. So you're kind of forced to be in that position.
And the thing that you would change?
I think it's more of a Brussels thing than it is a Belgian thing. I think the ecosystem itself, I think Ghent obviously has put itself on the map as being sort of the Silicon Valley of Belgium / Flanders. But in Brussels, I kind of like that feeling of having a coherent ecosystem. I think that's partially the language divide again. There's Flemish entrepreneurs, there's French-speaking entrepreneurs, and in Brussels, that's clearly two separate communities. And then, you divide, so you lose power. I think that's maybe a downside in Belgium. is sort of the lack of community, but we have great examples that have done it before. So I'm not here to complain about Belgium in general, but if I have to point something out, it would be that.
Ewout, you are actually also a co-founder of Winter Circus.
Yes.
And I do believe that Winter Circus is one of the key players or the main point, the main hub of the Belgian startup ecosystem. Could you explain what the Winter Circus is to the people that don't know, if there are any still?
Are there still people that don't know
I
the
don't think
Winter
so,
Circus?
but if there's some people, coming all the way from Silicon Valley, moving from Silicon Valley to Belgium because startup ecosystem is greater. What do you say about Winter Circus?
Yeah, I think Winter Circus it's a really amazing project. First time I heard about the initiative, I was immediately convinced and also lucky to be asked to join the Winter Circus team as co-founder. I think it all starts with being a very iconic building in the city center of Ghent. I think the first 20 times I entered the building, I just always took the same pictures. Was every time impressed again with what an amazing building it actually is. It's also the people behind Winter Circus. So it's founded by 20, 30 different tech entrepreneurs. Also, City of Ghent, University of Ghent, KU Leuven have been joining the Winter Circus project. So the network behind it already is very impressive. And then, we're so lucky to have Louis Jonkere as ex-entrepreneur, well, still entrepreneur, but now CEO of the Winter Circus. He built out an amazing team. And I think what's happening today with the Winter Circus, it's what we dreamed of a couple of years ago, but now to see that becoming reality is pretty amazing. So today it's a place where I think roughly 30 highly ambitious startups are working. They have their offices there. It's more than just that. There's weekly events, almost daily events. There's different restaurants, bars. The Miles Ahead office is located a couple of 100 meters from the Winter Circus. So every Monday, every Tuesday, I'm entering the Winter Circus to have some meetings. It's just, I think, finally, this whole vibrant ecosystem in Ghent has like one central place to connect with each other and to work from.
When I first came to Belgium, Winter Circus was one of the kind of first stops, one of the first kind of spots that I went to. And I do believe that having a physical place, Zooms and Google Meets are all fantastic, but having a physical connection with people, it cannot be replaced.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. Florian, you come from an academic background. What are the main kind of struggles of the spin-offs? You mentioned that the having the tech, but not the problem at first is first. But what are the kind of the mindset shift that needs to be transformed in the people that are doing startups from academia?
Well, it's hard to speak for everybody, but at least I can speak for Jesse and myself. Maybe that's also an engineering thing. That's being okay with good enough and failing fast. Because as an academic, you're taught to be very, very specific, very precise. Don't put something out there unless you've tested it and retested it and you're sure that your hypotheses and all the data is correct. And your paper, you spend two weeks writing that paper about that data. And then only do you send it out to a jury and test it out. While as a startup,
actually the opposite.
It's the exact opposite. It's okay. There are limits to what you can and can't do. It needs to be honest, but for the love of God, just break stuff as fast as you can. And okay, it still needs to be functional. You still need to be able to learn something from it. But that's the most important part, is what can you learn from it? And is that thing that you're building good enough to learn what you want to learn? Yes, then ship it and test it out. And that's something that we needed to work on in the beginning, that not everything needs to be perfect. You don't need a perfect landing page. Your first YouTube videos don't need to be in like super high quality, and just put it out there, see what works, and then iterate, improve. That's the thing that I think requires the most mindset shift coming from academia.
Now, if there are any founders, if there are any kind of people who are just starting with an idea, maybe they also have something, maybe you could give some, really practical tips, what tools to use. Of course, for forms, they will use Weebly, right?
Exactly.
That's good. Maybe you could give practical advice on the tools, maybe on the psychology inside the team, and just whatever you would like to transcend to the founders.
So I think the first thing to do is not look at tools at all. I think if I've learned anything up until now is if you're starting out with an idea, take some budget or try to do it for free, but go talk to people that might have that problem. That's the thing that we learned the hard way by first looking at tools and building something. And we've stopped doing that. Now, if we have a new idea for a new feature or for the pivots, we first talk to people with a clear hypothesis that we try to validate or invalidate and just talk to them. That's the first thing. And it can be hard to do that for free because most people, if you just go talk to them on or you reach out to LinkedIn, they don't want to spend half an hour talking to somebody they don't know. But there's plenty of platforms that allow you to just pay for an interview, and okay, you'll lose in between 50 and 100 euros per interview, but you don't need to do 100. If you talk to 5 people in your demographic, that's typically already enough to gather some very big insights, high level on what you want to do. That's the first thing that you should do.
And you about practical tools that helped you on the founder's journey.
Well, maybe just a little side note here, because I totally agree with what Florian is saying. I already told you we made all the possible mistakes. So from the very beginning, when we founded PySync, our goal was to do it completely product-led growth, meaning we won't talk to customers, we won't do any sales conversations. So one day I still remember one of our very first customers sent us an email asking us to jump on a call. And we were actually confused, like, oh no, on a call. That was not the goal. That was not the way we were going to build this company. We were actually thinking of not joining that call. It was a very stupid mistake back then. So I totally agree with Florian. Talking with your customers, getting out there in the market and validate your idea is super important. That's the only way to just get the ball rolling and find that product market fit that is so important. Maybe another thing, definitely try to get surrounded with like-minded people. That's one thing I always try to do. I always try to meet up with founders that were one stage ahead of where we are, because probably they made all the mistakes already that we were going to make. And it's just very valuable to talk with them and discuss your challenges. And they might come up with some really good ideas that you didn't think of. So don't just sit there on your own. Communicate with other people. Don't go to networking events every day because you still need to get the work done. But just by chatting with other entrepreneurs, founders, by joining some of the Winter Circus events, it will really help you get the right mindset and don't make the same mistakes as others have been doing.
Let's talk about the acquisition process. You have been through that. Actually, quite amazing that a local Ghent startup got acquired by big HubSpot. First of all, when should a company be acquired? What is the stage that you feel the founder should be in, the company financially, product-wise should be in to already be ready for acquisition? Is there too early or too late to be acquired?
Yeah, that's a hard question. Definitely a good advice would be to align with your investors from day one about your exit strategy. Once investors are joining your company, you know that one day there will be an exit. And it all depends on the dynamics of the fund that is joining you. Are you joining them late in their investment stage, or are you one of the first portfolio companies? That will all influence the timing when investors will need to get out. Doesn't always mean you need to exit as a founder, but just having those conversations is important. Also with your co-founders, I think, because you never know when that opportunity will happen. Like in our case, we were not looking to get acquired. So back then we were actually, from day one, we were focused on the US and the fact that all our customers were just coming from the US. That market was growing so rapidly that as an international company, we were just naturally focused on that market. Over time, we started traveling to the US more and more, mainly to build out partnerships with all those platforms that we were integrated with. HubSpot was one of those examples. HubSpot was a partner of PySync, one of the 100 partners actually that we had. Maybe the most promising one, so definitely a partner that we were focusing on quite a bit. But in 2019, we were really focused on continue growing the company. We just had a verbal agreement for a new funding round. We were opening our first office in New York, actually in the middle of hiring our first US employees. Was a very exciting time. Because I still remember it was the summer of 2019. And I told my girlfriend that it probably would be a very calm summer. I mean, calm was relative, but what I meant was we had an agreement for the funding. The office was open, so I didn't expect too many surprises that summer. I probably would have been able to go on a holiday without being disturbed every moment of the day. Until HubSpot called us. That was actually beginning of July. So they've been a partner with us for years. They've been showing their interest to invest in PySync. So the previous funding rounds in 2018, they actually tried to invest. But we were just almost finished with the whole fundraising process, and it was just too late to get all of a sudden get a US investor on board. But we always promised them to keep them up to date when we were going to raise a new funding round. So 2019, we just sent them a message, hey, just FYI, we're going to raise a new funding round. So if you're still interested, you can maybe join this round. And I think 2 weeks later, I got a call. Still see myself sitting in the office. It was like 8 p.m. in the evening. I was sitting there alone. Actually got a message from the VP Corporate Development of HubSpot asking to jump on a call as soon as possible. I already felt something was coming. I jumped on that call and immediately got the question, or basically the message that they didn't want to invest, but actually wanted to acquire us. And we're wondering if we were open for that part, actually. That's when you put your poker face on.
Maybe.
Depends, of course, because we already secured our funding rounds and we were really focused on growing the company. But of course, deep inside you, when a company like HubSpot, probably the biggest player in our markets, and also a company that we were really looking up to as founders, if they are interested to acquire you, you definitely want to think about that a little bit. So.
Ewout, if you could give advice to Florian now, if, for example, in about a few years, when Weebly will be big enough to be acquired, what are the kind of 3 practical advice that you will have that you need to have in the company? First, you already said you need to be aligned with investors, transparent about the stage of the company, but how big Weebly should be? What are the practical advice? Maybe there are some papers that you definitely need to sign. Maybe there are agreements need to be made with teams, options, and so on. Maybe some practical advices.
We're already aligned, so that's the first check mark. So we're 30% on the way.
We actually had that conversation.
Exactly. Right before
trying
the
to do the right things.
No,
I mean, also don't be too much focused on your exit from day one. Really, I mean, you have so many other problems to solve. Like, don't think about an exit from the very beginning. First, try to find that product market fit. Try to find how you can scale your company to 10 million in ARR. That's like the North Star that we're always aiming for at Miles Ahead. Like, if a startup comes in, we look at the financial plan and we're trying to understand, is this a team and an ID that will be able to scale their company to 10 million of ARR? And I mean, if you're able to figure out those things and you're able to actually get to those millions or even 10 millions in ARR, then finding that ideal exit partner probably won't be the hardest thing. I think the hardest thing is finding those magical ingredients to grow your company. I think maybe sometimes a little bit underestimated is marketing and branding of your product. To give you an example, at PySync, we were heavily focused on marketing. Like, marketing was our main channel of revenue because we didn't do any sales. So all revenue came from inbound marketing, SEO, but also branding was very important. So one thing we always did with PySync was really heavily focused on customer satisfaction and trying to build up those online customer reviews. G2 Crowd was a platform that we were heavily focused on. So we definitely had those systems in place where we were asking our most happy customers to leave a review. And it's actually kind of amazing what kind of reviews we were getting on G2 Crowd. I still remember one review was titled, "Thank you, Jesus." Like a very happy customer who finally discovered our product and was so happy. He wrote this big review on G2 Crowd. And like throughout those years, we've seen that, those reviews just kept coming in, and we just gradually started being positioned higher in the G2 Crowd landscapes. So there was this SaaS integration landscape where companies like Zapier were positioned. And I still remember one day we were actually able to get above Zapier. We were actually the number one player in the market. And during those conversations with HubSpot, it really turns out that for them, that was a very important proof point. I still remember my very first conversation with the VP Corporate Development. Actually told me that we were going to do a big presentation towards HubSpot management. And he actually advised me to start with the slide where the G2 growth landscape was being shown and PySync as the number one integration platform. So that's definitely an example where branding is so important. You definitely want to try to make your company look bigger than it's actually is. Without, fake it till you make it, without doing it in a fraudulent way. But definitely, advice there.
Florian, how did you manage, or how do you manage sales? If it's a small startup, a founder is a technical person, is a salesperson, is a HR person, and so on. What is the best way you brought in sales?
So I think we again made some mistakes in that sense. We initially started with a sales-led growth machine. So I would essentially focusing first on Belgium and then looked at France and the US as well. And I noticed that the amount of effort that it takes from cold outreach to actually land to a close of a subscription, that was just wasted effort, in the sense that you spend so much time trying to convince somebody to use your tool and to then sell a subscription, and then they still need to start actually onboarding and using it. And especially for a tool like ours, even back when we were a Figma to web app converter, it just made more sense to tell people like, look, here, you can try it for free. And if you're interested, and if you want somebody to help you on board, etc., I'm here to talk to you, to help you, to give you advice, to tell you what works and what doesn't. And so, of course, not everybody can do that. If you're sales-led and you're selling enterprise software, then you need to go through the entire sales sort of process, and that's not my expertise. I just learned to take off the sales hat and to try to talk to people to figure out, do they have a problem that we can solve? And if so, just try to help them solve that problem. And if it happens to be with our products, all the better. If it's not, then I'll point them to other form building tools or all tools in general. But so for me, sales is that, it's just solving the issue. And today we do that primarily through the product, but I still reach out to a lot of people, either users or non-users, just to have conversations with people.
Well, you had your clients mainly kind of in the sales industry. You had a lot of marketing, sales, and so on. How do you feel like in 2025? What's the best way to do that, to do sales?
Well, again, sales is not my my main area of focus. We're really focused on product-led growth companies at Maaltijd. But it's an interesting question, and it all depends a little bit also on the price point of your product. Like, what's the problem you're solving? What is the solution that you're offering? What kind of price are you charging for that offering? Because that really depends or determines your go-to-market strategy. For example, Florian's product, it's priced pretty low. It's an SME product, 20, 30 euros a month. Was the same for PySync. So for that kind of prices, it doesn't make sense to do too much sales. Like, the acquisition cost will just not work actually. So depending on the kind of product you're shipping, you'll be using a whole other go-to-market strategy, going from marketing inbound driven to like completely enterprise sales-driven strategies. It's getting interesting once you're like between the two, price point of like 1,000 euros a month, 2,000 euros a month. And that's where I think there's a really interesting go-to-market strategy where you can combine SEO and inbound marketing together with like a whole inside sales force to qualify those leads and then ultimately close the deals. But marketing is so important. SEO is very important. Of course, these days with everything that's happening in AI, looks like ChatGPT starts replacing search engines a little bit. So definitely a very important thing for founders to start looking at these days. How can you make sure that AI and ChatGPT is picking up your product and advising customers to actually use your product? That will probably be the new kind of SEO that will start to happen in 2015 and next years.
Let's talk about AI. You said that you have integrated already a few years back. there's a lot of hype. We don't really see the transparency. There is no, people talk about it, but nobody knows actually how to implement it. Some people do, but most of the kind of people who work in corporate jobs and so on. What would your advice be? Maybe taking off the hat of Weebly, but as an entrepreneur, maybe as a person who just needs the work to get done. What tools in what areas do you feel like it helps the most now?
So I actually read an article this morning, Financial Times, that talked about sort of shadow AI. So in the same sense, you used to have shadow IT, so people used IT systems without central IT giving their okay in a corporate structure to actually use that tool. Quite some people are using mostly ChatGPT, even if company policy is you cannot use ChatGPT, right? So that's pretty crazy. I mean, they pay out of pocket personally to use ChatGPT because the added value is that much that people are willing to pay out of pocket to use a tool in their everyday lives, in their professional lives, even if their company says they can't. So I think that enterprises aren't lagging behind with the adoption of AI. At least the people working in those enterprises aren't lagging behind. Then, of course, comes the question: how do you integrate that on a policy level and from an enterprise perspective? I think one of the main challenges is your data privacy. Like, what can you share? Can you self-host the model? I think that's one of the prime concerns when you're integrating AI or LLMs today. I'm specifically talking about LLMs in an enterprise setting. So I would start from the privacy perspective and work my way down the requirements instead of looking at a specific vendor because they've become commodity at this point. So we've seen it with DeepSeek as well. It's essentially, they're churning out new models as we go. So I would look at privacy and hard constraints before looking at how fast or specific features.
And Ewout, what is your opinion? What people, how should they use AI in everyday life now? And especially maybe from a founder perspective, how do you feel it helps today's founders?
Yeah, I think today it's kind of critical to start using AI. There's so many ways now to optimize almost any kind of process in your company. It's really a trend that we're seeing happening. We just discussed this internally this week at the office as well. Like the amount of revenue you can generate per employee while scaling your startup, like that amount, it used to be a couple of 100,000 euros typically that you should be able to generate per employee. But these days, it can really get up to 1 million in revenue per person, per employee, just because of all the optimizations you can do through AI. Like people can work way more efficient. There's so much of the processes that you can almost automate or replace with the AI-based platforms and tools. So that's kind of crazy because that actually means that you could build a 10 million ARR company with only 10 people. And that's, today it's almost possible, or it is already possible to do that. So I think if companies these days are not embracing AI, then they will definitely lag behind and won't be able to compete with the competitors that are heavily focused on it.
We live in interesting times where we see this kind of global dominance of US maybe shifting towards China. But the sad thing is that Europe is not like on the chessboard. It's not a big player. It's not even in the question. So, and from what I see, the problem is in the policy making of EU rather than innovating, they're regulating. What do you take as the main kind of burden of EU? What should change policy wise in the European Union?
Well, actually, I think it's like definitely the last months we were definitely convinced that Europe was completely lagging behind, and even China was lagging behind. Since DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago, that changed. Just recently, I think today or yesterday, the news broke that Mistral came up with Le Chat, which turned out to be also very competitive to OpenAI. So all of a sudden, Europe is on the chessboard as well. So it looks like it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. And every week things are changing. Like my partner Wim has been saying the past weeks, never a dull week in AI. Ever looking at all the updates that are happening. But for Europe, it will be very important to just make sure that we stay on the chessboard and don't lag too much behind. not sure what that all would mean policy-wise, but if we see what's happening in the US, I mean, the kind of initiatives there, as Europe being, we're definitely lagging behind. Luckily, I mean, there's all these open source models being shipped these days so that we can still benefit from it. So it's not that we're in big trouble, but very important to keep an eye on that.
I think also as an entrepreneur, there's no point in worrying about all of that. As a VC, of course, it has an impact on your bottom line. But as an entrepreneur, the top problem you have is finding problem solution fit, product market fit. Whether or not EU is over-regulating or not, it's the least of your worries. And if it's a worry, then try to sort of move to the US, get into Y Combinator. But I mean, I think a lot of people are focusing on whether EU policies are sort of keeping them from being able to grow faster or not. And unless you become a scale-up and it really becomes an issue, in the beginning stages, I don't think there's a big difference whether you're in the EU or in the US. Okay, you'll get more funding in the US, but again, there's no point in stressing or worrying about stuff that you can't control either way. Just go for it. And if it turns out that you need more money, then try to move to the US if need be.
Ewout, I would ask you about the current state of the VC scene. I know you have a founder's hat on and you're more on this, but maybe from a financial perspective. So we know that during COVID, the investors invested in high valuation startups. Now the valuations have dropped, and the kind of the interest, or it's kind of became colder in the VC scene. It's the beginning of 2025. It's the kind of only the beginning of the AI wave. What do you suggest for the startups who are looking to raise now, who need capital? What are the most important aspects that they should concentrate on?
Really great question. Again, for Moz Ahead, we're mainly looking at teams. Just want to emphasize that again. But besides teams, I mean, we're trying to really understand every time a company is pitching, like what's the actual IP of that company? Is it just like a ChatGPT wrapper that can be replicated in maybe 2 hours by another smart person? And it's definitely not interesting for us to invest. What we see is that, I mean, there's so many solutions available today. Those are creating a lot of opportunities. And what definitely works is like looking at certain verticals, because an LLM is still like trained by all the data that's available out there, not always by the specific concrete information from one specific industry. So building that vertical product, that's really solving a big problem in one specific vertical by building up some IP, like trying to combine internal data with those LLMs. Those are definitely more interesting companies for us to focus on than just the typical AI wrappers that are starting to exist everywhere.
Fantastic. Florian, maybe one thing that you would like to wish yourself in 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know how many companies will you start by then, how many rounds will you raise, but what's the one thing, what's the one kind of thought that you want to have throughout the years of your foundings? What are the mission?
The personal mission, then you mean?
Yes.
It's always to be building something which people like to use. We started with Yessa, partially from the frustration of come from academia and you build stuff, but then except for a very small niche of people, nobody really cares. And so we wanted to be able to build something which was actually used by people. And that's all that really matters. Of course, we're in this, so we know that at some point we'll exit. And at some point, hopefully, that will mean a nice exit personally to us as well. But the important part was always, let's build a product that people love and then have it be used everywhere around the world. And it's always been this sort of goal of being able to look at Mixpanel at any second of any day and see a whole bunch of people all across the world generating events. That's always been sort of the dream. And I think I won't be doing the same thing with Weebly in 20 years, because at some point, if I'm still at Weebly in 20 years, then that means I'm probably not building anymore, but I've sort of outgrown my role as a startup CEO. So the goal is to exit, start something new, build a new product, try to launch it globally, and then sort of it's ready to start again.
Of course, before you exit, first get to the unicorn status.
Yeah. We'll make sure
can agree on that.
We've aligned on that. That's the.
Let's finish this conversation with a quick round of questions. One sentence is purely enough. What is one thought that I have not asked you about today that you would like to say to the viewers? So what's a thing that we didn't talk about today that you think is important in 2025 to all the entrepreneurs, investors, corporates that are listening to us?
We kind of talked about the importance of marketing, but sort of the importance of not trying to be absolutely unique and focus on, oh no, somebody's already doing that, so I can't launch a new product in that. I mean, we were talking about applying verticals and not being a generic GPT wrapper. But then when you look at sort of OpenAI itself, they've managed to not become obsolete, but suddenly DeepSeek pops up and they do the same thing or more or less, but for lesser money. And so it shows to which point that you just need to find a problem and build a go-to-market machine. And it's that go-to-market machine that most often is not easily re-implementable from the get-go. And so I think today even more, because with AI code generation, building a product, like building the tech around the product is rather easy. And I play around with AI code generation a lot myself. So building a moat from a tech perspective has become really difficult, while go-to-market is still something very human. You're still selling to people, right? So completely copying a go-to-market machine is something that's very difficult. So focus on that.
Yeah, go-to-market is very important. One thing that's also underestimated, I feel, is really user experience and design. And that's one thing I learned from going from the founder side to the dark side of the of the table. Like I'm seeing all these pitch decks coming in, and some pitch decks they look so ugly. And for me, as like an investor, then if I look at those pitch decks, it just doesn't work. Like you don't feel like that team will build an amazing product if you just look at their pitch deck. So I always advise founders to hire a designer. Even when they are still in the phase where they are just building the pitch deck. But also for the first prototype of the product, definitely something that came up a lot in our meetings. And definitely something that Weebly also finds really important. But design, good user experience, I mean, it's critical. And even if you're selling to enterprises, I mean, they used to be very different, but I really believe, and HubSpot is a great example, like they have an amazing product from a user perspective and design kind of way. And they are really, I mean, going up markets, eating away from all, like the Salesforce market share. So shipping to big enterprises with a really nice looking product. And I think today, I mean, it's so important. Like you need that product. People want to play around with it and they want to be convinced before they buy it, even on an enterprise level.
There's nothing more horrible than going to a website and then book a demo or contact sales is the only thing you can do. Like I always want to just try it out. Like, let me just try it out. Even if it's a demo environment and there's no integrations, and so part of the value can't be shown. Being able to have a look and feel and play around with a product is so important. But I get that some people want to make sure that you see the value before. But I mean, yeah, it's frustrating when I can't. And it's like, never mind, I won't then.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
That's actually some really practical and really applicable points that you made. Then a book that helped you on the founder's journey.
Well, a book that I'm pretty a fan of these days is the book Product-Led Growth. It's a book I always take with me, actually. It's a very hands-on, practical book that will explain to founders how they should build their product, how they should ship their product. There's all kind of like frameworks and models in it, also to be able to determine as a founder, like, is product-led growth the right way to go? Like, not every company should try to do it that way. For some companies, just the typical sales strategies just make a lot of sense. But yeah, definitely Weebly again. If you read that book, it's like so clear that product-led growth is the way to go. And the whole book goes over all the different aspects of building out that go-to-market strategy. It's an interesting one.
I think as an engineer and as a founder, the book that helped me the most was Ender's Game. It's fiction, so it's not a self-help or a go-to guide. But without going into the details of the actual story, it's very heavily driven on psychology and sort of having empathy for other people and understanding their needs and what makes them tick. And as an engineer, that's something that I always used to just push to the background. Like, that doesn't matter. It's all about making stuff work. But it's super important to understand that. As a founder, you need to understand your investors, your customers, your team members. So being able to sort of understand what makes people tick and know that everybody has their secret garden and motives. And I think that's very important. And that book helped me sort of understand that not everybody is like me and that I need to understand other people in order to work together with them, basically.
And the final question, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower? What do you feel that you do really, really greatly?
I think if I look back at my startup journey, I think one of the things I was pretty good at was really aligning the entire team and keeping everyone motivated on the team. It's something I always found very important, making sure that everyone is heading in the same direction. There's all kind of ways you can do that. Like, one example, it's a stupid example, but it was always my dream to have this big television screen in the office with all the real-time data and metrics of our company. I probably already told that story 5 times to Florian.
I have the same as well.
But that was like an amazing time when all of a sudden we had that television next to the coffee machine. All the metrics were on there, real-time data coming in, like how much MRR we were generating, how many customers, how many trials were currently in the pipeline, even the use cases of the new customers signing up. And anytime, again, people drinking coffee, we're looking at a dashboard and having discussions. You could also see the targets, like, are we performing on target? Are we lagging behind? So it triggered all kinds of discussions in the office. And it's something I really learned. And the moment I had to learn it was actually while we were, I think, growing towards like 10 people, because that was the first time that we were not all sitting in the same room again. And that's when I started noticing that all of a sudden, the people in the other room had no idea what we were actually doing. What is our vision? What is our end goal? Just because, I was sitting in the other room and I was always communicating with the people in my room. And at that point in time, we started doing our like monthly meetings, gatherings together. I let the whole team communicate to each other on our goals, targets, strategy, and always try to do that in a fun and energetic way to keep everyone motivated. So I think it's a very important one.
So it's pretty lame, but I think my superpower would be I'm very good at wielding my own carrot and my own stick. I've managed to sort of really appreciate gamification of my own life. And so if there's something that I don't want to do or I don't like doing, I gamify it. I put some metrics on it, and I always want to be in the green or make sure that I reach them. And so that sort of helps you do the dirty work and just get shit done in the way they say it. It's just by gamifying. I know I need to reach out to 15 people daily. That's sort of that's the goal. If I don't do it, I can't cross off the reminder on my iPhone. And so it just sits there and it annoys me. And so I reached out to 15 people daily, only to get the reminder done. But the side effect, of course, is that in the meanwhile, I'm talking to people, I'm growing the network. But yeah, carrot and stick. I'm carrot stick man.
Guys, thank you so much for the conversation, both miles ahead, and we will be at Supernova 2025. That will happen on the 27th and 28th of March in Antwerp, Belgium. So if you want to meet guys like this, come to Supernova. Thank you guys for this conversation.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.